Hello, welcome to Voices of Freedom. I'm your host, Katie Colt. Today we have 4 members of the PMC Class of 1966. They will discuss memories and stories about their time at PMC. Today we will hear from Bill Simolin, Clark Wonderland, Bob Grosh, and Dave Eckert. Welcome, gentlemen. Today we are very excited to be speaking to you. If you don't mind, could you please introduce yourself with your name, your cadet number, and your hometown?
Sure, good morning. I'm Bill Simolin. My cadet number was 533, and I live in Apopka, Florida.
I'm Clark Wonderland. I don't know my cadet number and I've not been able to find it. The library has not been able to help me at this point. I live in Cleveland, Ohio.
Name's Bob Grosh, Katie. Yonkers, New York is where I'm from. Cadet number 195. I'll never forget that.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Dave Eckert, cadet number 187, and I live in Wallingford, Pennsylvania, right up the street.
Wonderful. We're so excited to have you here, gentlemen. So Dave, let me start with you. How did you hear about PMC before you attended?
Well, I grew up in a neighboring community, Ridley Township, and a lot of Ridley guys came here, most as civilians as opposed to cadet. And so I was very familiar with it from that, but also a gentleman that my father had worked with recommended strongly that I consider it. He was an instructor in the evening division and recommended that I consider it, so I did.
Wonderful. Mr. Grosh?
I'm from Yonkers, New York. And in high school, I made a lot of bad mistakes. And I was told that it would be in my best interest to attend PMC. And quite frankly, it was the best thing that I've ever done.
I heard it through a college night at high school. Myself and one other fellow were the only ones that went in to see the representative from PMC. And I was excited about it because I always wanted to be in the military and thought this was a good choice for me. My parents thought so also. But I heard about it then, and it was the only school I applied to.
Well, I'm from New Haven, Connecticut originally, born and raised there, and I found out about it through my guidance counselor. My senior year, I only applied to military schools. That's the only thing I was interested in. And PMC was one of the choices, the Citadel, VMI, even Kings Point, interestingly enough. But I came down here for an interview my senior year, and I liked it and stayed.
Wonderful. So, Clark, you said that your parents were supportive of this decision. Gentlemen, were your parents supportive of you attending PMC?
Very.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, mine were. My father was a little apprehensive because he was worried about the tuition.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, when thinking about your past at PMC, what was the most memorable? We can start with you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
My most memorable memory would have to be the time 3 of my classmates and I went up to Kings Point and stole the bell before the famous football game that we played every year with them. That's one of my biggest memories.
Did you get in trouble?
No, but mainly because we didn't get caught.
Right.
See, that's the key right there.
We did it. We did it in memory of an attempt to do that. That happened our freshman year, our rookie year, when those senior class members tried to do it, and they did get caught and got in a lot of trouble. But that's one of my big memories.
Mr. Grosh?
I would say the Boardwalk Bowl, my senior year, down at Atlantic City. Being able to play that game after being on the squad for 4 years. The whole football program was a great memory for myself. I really enjoyed it.
Mr. Eckert?
My most memorable thing was in our freshman year. As rooks, we weren't really cadets, we were always rooks until after the rook period ended. But in any event, we were here, I believe, for about 4 straight weeks without being able to get off campus. And because I did live locally, when we had our first town line, which was about 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, we could be off campus until I think 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I remember that my father was on the porch of Old Main, and it's the first time he had seen me in my cadet uniform. And I looked up, saw his eyes, felt the pride that I had, pardon me. But then fast forward, when I was on the staff here, we had to rebuild the porch of Old Main. And today there is a lapel pin similar to this, but silver, with 66 and an oval, and that's embedded in the concrete, right where he was standing. So that's my most memorable.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned your Rook weeks. How were they? How difficult were they? How much of a change was it from your regular life? What was that experience like?
Well, I remember coming from Yonkers, New York with my dad, and I had the long hair, the shark skin suit, the pointed Italian shoes, and an attitude. And I remember walking up C Company's first sergeant then. Remember, guys, was George Fox?
Yep.
Yeah.
Tough guy. And he looked at me, and he looked at my father, and he said, "Don't worry, Mr. Grosh, we'll take care of him." And that started one heck of a year. I was not really ready for the Rook program. I had no idea what it was about coming in. And it was challenging, it really was.
The Rook period for us was a period where we all got together. We were all in the same boat. We were all putting up with the same kind of garbage from the upperclassmen. But it really brought us together as a class. And also, in hindsight, it was the period where we learned to take orders before we went into the military and had to give orders. So it was a good training period. I was scared in the beginning, but really I was enthusiastic about it. I enjoyed it. It didn't bother me at all when it came down to it.
I'd second that myself. There's a lot of harassment, a lot of physical challenges from the upper class. You know, if you did something wrong, drop for push-ups and bracing and walking at attention all the time. And I thrived on that. I came here looking for that. I grew up, my father was a strict disciplinarian, probably the toughest guy I've ever had to live under, to include drill instructors in the Marine Corps where I spent my career. So the Rook period for me was a challenge, and it was what I wanted, and I got what I wanted.
So what was a typical day at PMC after the Rook period?
Oh, after the Rook period? Well, it would be pretty much a normal college routine, except with the military flavor thrown in. You get up early in the morning, sometimes you had physical training, but you always had a formation, march into breakfast, and then after breakfast you broke for classes and you went through the day, and after classes we had either extracurricular activities or the sports would practice, sports teams. And we'd have a formation in the evening for dinner. Mm-hmm. The whole cadet corps would march to chow, and then study time. So it was a structured day. The days were structured.
That was.
Yeah, you had something to do almost especially the first year. Mm-hmm. You had something to do all the time.
You didn't have a lot of free time.
No,
you were getting your uniforms together, shining your shoes, polishing your brass, taking care of things, getting your clothes to the cleaners and all that. So it was structured, and that's partly why my parents wanted me to come here, because they knew I needed structure or I wasn't going to get through college.
For me, it was very important because from 7 to 10, was that it, guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
From 7 to 10, you had to be in your, I forgot the name of it, class D uniform with...
Oh, no, the jacket. And
yeah,
the
you had to be at your desk. You couldn't have your elbows, and you had to be studying. And I needed that, I really did. And if you had to study for an exam afterwards, remember you had the late lights sign that you put on the outside of the door, which signified that you're going to stay up after taps. And coming from not really doing real well in high school, that was very, very important for me.
Did your grades drastically change in college?
Oh yeah, well they changed from my freshman year, not really understanding what it was all about. Until I graduated in my senior year, I did okay. But it was gradual, learning how to study, learning about the professors, what you could do, and what needed to be said in the blue book. You remember the blue books, guys?
Yeah.
And I got pretty good at it towards the end. Not at the beginning, however. It was a struggle.
So Dave, can you just talk to me about if you had any free time, what were you doing? Were you with your friends? Were you by yourself? What were you doing during your free time?
There really, as these gentlemen have said, there really wasn't much free time. But starting in our second semester of our freshman year, it eased up quite a bit. And some of us pledged fraternities, others were involved in other activities. And so free time was really also somewhat structured by the choices that we made.
And did you have weekends free, or were those jam-packed just as weekdays? Did you go home? Did you visit other schools? What were weekends like?
During the freshman year, we did not have, as I recall, any overnight on a Saturday, because on Sunday morning, we would all, by various religious groups, churches, we would march to the church service, so we had to be here for that. So I don't recall that we had much free time on the weekends other than that 1 o'clock until 9 o'clock on Saturday afternoon if we were lucky.
Which I never got to enjoy because I always got in trouble that first year and with demerits. And I ended up behind Old Main with the rifle marching back and forth. What was it?
Tours.
Tours,
Yeah,
punishment
call them
tours.
punishment tours.
And it was an hour?
About an hour, yeah, per
Yeah, it was
session.
about an hour. I was there all afternoon. So I looked at...
It was based on how many demerits you got, too.
Yeah, I
More demerits, the more
couldn't
you
stay out of
time
trouble that first
Carry a
year.
rifle, just walk down the end of the street and back.
And in 4 years, I never walked a punishment tour.
You never did?
Never walked a punishment tour. But
I only walked one.
after our freshman year, we started to get involved with some of the civilian side of the college because there was the day students who were civilians. And that was good because we had the input of them. That was not a pleasant time for the military, certainly, during that era. And we got to see them and interact with them and spent some time discussing. We didn't get a lot of time off campus. It wasn't until your senior year that you were really allowed to go off campus without some kind of permission. And even as a senior, you needed permission. So we didn't get a lot of free time off campus. There were more things to do for the cadets on Saturday. There was parades on Sunday and things like that.
That's what I remember, the parades on Sunday.
Oh, we had inspections Saturday morning.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
besides
Friday nights, when most
Yeah.
college kids are out having a good time, we're preparing for
For
inspections.
inspections.
Shining, cleaning our rooms, shining our brass buttons on our uniforms and getting ready for that.
All
Saturday
your-
mornings for inspections.
all your
Sunday
clothes.
afternoons are parades in the spring and fall. So free time was precious.
Yeah, and your clothes had to be a certain width and a certain height, and they all had to be folded and stacked, and your clothes had to be in a certain order in the closet. So you weren't allowed any extra clothes. You didn't have any civilian clothes unless you found a place to hide them. Otherwise, you weren't allowed, there wasn't much opportunity to get off campus.
Wow.
We had to fold our T-shirts and skivvies into certain size squares and stack them up. We had
Right.
little cardboard frames that we cut ourselves to the right dimensions and folded our clothes around these frames and stacked them up.
That's
so
very
they'd be, just like a detention.
And socks had to be folded a certain way. And all
You'd
that
have loved it if you'd been back
I
there.
would have hated it.
And I'm not an organized guy, but that kind of got me to be an organized guy, at least while I was here.
I remember the first parade I went to,
Oh,
and as a rook, coming around the corner and looking at the stadium, the old stadium, there were a lot of people that came to those parades every Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
And, I was impressed that the people from the area came.
It was a big attraction.
Yeah.
the parades were really one of my best experiences here because you could feel when the band started to play, you could feel the whole corps just stand straighter, their backs got straighter, their steps got more regimented, and it was really something else. When the band started playing, you knew you were on.
Yep.
Can you gentlemen explain what the point of the parades were, why they took place?
Well, part of it was community service, I'm
Right.
sure. Just to do it, to display for the local people. But it also was a bit of pageantry for the cadet corps to show off our.
And it was training. I mean,
Training,
I didn't know my
discipline.
left from my right, and I had to learn my left from my right.
Yeah, remember on, I think Tuesdays and Thursday, we had to go with our squads out to the football field,
For drill.
and we
yeah.
had drill,
Practice drill, yeah.
and they would have close order drill. And I think on Sunday was a chance for us to show how much we've learned,
Yeah.
and how we could basically work as a team. And it worked for me. It really did.
So you
Wait.
mentioned the day students. What was the relationship, or was there a relationship between them? Dave, could you speak on that a little bit?
Well, because I came from local, I had a lot of college or high school classmates that were here as civilians. So for me, my relationship with the civilian were always very, very positive. And then I pledged Alpha Sigma Phi fraternity, which unfortunately is no longer here. But and Alpha Sig, unlike Theta Chi or Teak at that time, Alpha Sig was about 50% civilian, 50% cadet. And so that, again, fostered that relationship that I had with the civilians.
For me, it was the football.
Right.
They had a lot of civilians that became close friends, not only with me, but with Clark, and I just saw Fred McGinney outside. Guys like Chick Goebel, Billy Arnold, Pete Rohanna. When you put the football uniform on, it was different. You weren't a cadet. And quite frankly, Chick and I still see each other and are friends all these years later. And he was a civilian that did real well. I think he was vice president of our senior class. So it was different back then for the civilians. In my opinion, having a team called the Cadets and having it called Pennsylvania Military College, but being a civilian, I always wondered how they felt. And quite frankly, I'm glad they got a chance to expand to Widener University. It's a lot more, I don't know what you would call it.
Inclusive.
Inclusive, that's a good word.
We were in class with the civilians all the time, so we got to see them there. And as Bob said, sports was another place where you really interacted with the civilians. Part of the problem was the fact that the civilians really didn't have a place to gather. I don't know what they call it now, but where the bookstore is and all that. That was really being built. Student lounge kind of thing. That really wasn't a place until later in our time here that they had a place to congregate after class. So a lot of them were back and forth, and if they stayed around between classes, there really wasn't a place for them to gather. But we did get closer and closer as the years went on. I think by our senior year, it was pretty much a class. We were the last class of cadets where the cadet corps was larger than the civilian group.
Wow.
After that, it got to be 50-50 or more civilians in the college than there was cadets. Part of it was the bringing in of the nursing students. And that happened our senior year. They started that.
And also the fraternities.
Yeah.
Clark and I were Teak, and Billy was Theta Chi. And there were, and of course, David was Alpha Sig. So you got a chance to meet people and take off the uniform and just hang around and go to these illegal parties outside of the campus.
Monticello.
Yeah, the Monticello Hotel. You guys remember Monticello Hotel?
Well, the place really, the school really catered to the cadet corps at the time. But I won't say one thing, a lot of the civilians that I got friendly with were older and had been in the service before. So they were coming back to college after a couple years in the military. So there was that connection too with a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I got very close to a couple of them. One who went on later in his career to become an assistant secretary of defense under President Reagan. And he actually approached me when I was in the Marine Corps to become his aide, his military aide, which it didn't work out for a lot of different reasons, but we did get along well with him, those of us who got got to know them.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think one of the special things was our junior year, when we came back for our junior year, McMorland Center opened.
Yes.
And I think that really gave us an opportunity to spend more time in a social way with the civilian students. Like Bob said, they would come and go because they had no place, but that gave us a place.
Interesting. So you all have mentioned extracurricular activities. Was Greek life and sports mainly it, or were there clubs? Were there organizations that you could join?
A lot of clubs.
Yeah, but the Greek life, for a lot of us, was the main ingredient. I just got a note from Teak, a gentleman named Doug, I guess he was the president, inviting us to come over and say hello, and I talked to Clark about it. I was a little bit forlorn. 11 guys are Teaks now in this great big campus. I remember when I was a senior, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 guys, and I know Theta Chi had as many as well. So the Teak life was important for me back then. Not so much now. I wish that would change. Remember, Clark, we talked about that?
Yeah. There's the, what was the question?
Extracurricular activities.
Extracurricular. There was,
Hi, my name is Clark.
yeah.
How you like me so far?
There were every club that you could think of at a civilian college, and all the clubs that are here now were there then. They were groups of 5, 10, 15 students that would get together for different religious groups, different political groups, some poli-sci group, language group, an English group. All these kinds of groups were there. And that's one place where the civilians kind of dominated, I think. They joined those, again, because it was a place for them to congregate.
Right.
And plus what Bob said about the fraternities, and then sports too. That was important to me as well as Bob. Was playing sports pretty much the whole year, different sports.
I joined the Cultural Affairs Committee,
Okay.
and the professor in charge was Sophocles M.
Sophocles.
Sophocles. Remember him?
Of course.
Yeah, he
From
was a
Marcus
great
Hook.
guy.
He
And
grew up in Marcus Hook.
yeah, he would bring in dignitaries from around the country, and it was our responsibility as cadets to drum up the cadets to come and see these dignitaries. And I really learned a lot. In fact, I was stationed, my last duty station, Sophocles M. Sophocles' son was a lieutenant under me.
No kidding.
Really?
That's good.
Good kid. So I remember them.
That's pretty good.
The professors here made a concerted effort, and especially Professor Murphy in charge of the engineering department, of bringing in civilian people who are in the business and in working to just get together with us. And I thought that was very, very valuable. You got to see what they were doing, and they actually came in and helped teach classes. And that was something that wasn't done in a lot of colleges at that time. And Murphy did it, and Mall, the president of the college at that time, Clarence Mall, I think it was Clarence.
Yes.
Anyway,
That's all.
they brought in all these civilians, which gave us a lot better perspective, not just the book learning, but what was really how to apply it.
Right.
And that was excellent for us, I think.
Were there any professors or staff that you gentlemen really remember or have an interesting story about?
I do. Professor Gottlieb
Yeah.
was our faculty advisor at Tau Kappa Epsilon. And when I first became a pledge, I was still getting used to the military life and to PMC, and I was going through tough times. And I remember that he took time, sit down, explained exactly what was going on and how it could succeed. Even though he was a chemistry professor and I never had him, I would say Professor Gottlieb was a gentleman that I really respected.
I was an English major, despite how I talked, but anyway. I was an English major, and Homer Nearing was the head of the English department. And he was a professor. He taught with 3x5 cards. And he had one for every course he taught, one group of 3x5 cards, held together by a rubber band. And one day, in the middle of class, something happened and his cards went flying. And he dismissed the class right because he couldn't teach anymore because his everything was on those 3x5 cards. And I liked him as a professor, but I thought that was rather humorous. He got very embarrassed, very angry actually. And Kelleher was another English professor that I really enjoyed. His wife went here at the same time in the evening division. But I couldn't have gotten into this college by the time of our junior year with the way the academics had improved. It just kept getting better and better, and that's one thing I credit to President Mall, Dr. Mall about that. It was a very, very excellent education, I mean, in any of the divisions.
I have the fondest memories of the Commandant of Cadets, Colonel Menard, who befriended me about my junior year, and he really mentored me. He became an enormous influence on my whole career. I stayed in touch with him for years after I graduated, correspondence-wise, you know. My biggest regret was missing his funeral. He passed away. But the guy changed my life. I mean, I say changed my life. He helped direct my life. Mm-hmm. I knew what I wanted to do, and he made me want it even more. The guy was fabulous.
That's amazing.
The other thing I remember about the professors, many of them, not all of them, but the ones who smoked, would smoke while they taught us. I had one professor who, the opposite of yours, he never had a note. He would come into class, sit on the front of his desk at the classroom, take out a pack of cigarettes, light one, and lecture for the whole period with no notes.
That's amazing.
And he would answer questions. The guy was brilliant. He's only here a short time. I can't remember his name, but that image always stuck in my mind. This guy doesn't have a note, and he's talking about political science and history, and just a brilliant guy. Made a big impression on me.
Another story about Colonel Menard, when we came back as seniors, he was Commandant of Cadets. He had replaced General Biddle. And I'll never forget, we gathered in the auditorium over in Old Main, what's now the President's Office Suite, and he introduced himself, and I'll never forget his words to us. One of the underlying principles of military leadership is be firm, be fair, and be consistent. Bill, I don't know if you remember that, but that's stuck in my brain for not only my military time, but my civilian career as well.
You mentioned your professor smoking in class. What was the classroom environment like? You know, now today it's very comfortable. We call our professors by their first name. It's a very easygoing environment. What was it like when you were in school?
Well, I remember being fairly relaxed, but we weren't first name basis. We called them professors, and
we don't have smoking in classrooms either.
I know, you don't smoke anywhere. I mean, that's shocking to me because I'm a smoker, and anyway.
Well, the military
But
did.
it went just the other opposite extreme, you know, from allowing that to now it's forbidden.
Yeah, smoke-free campus.
Yeah, smoke-free campus.
The military training didn't allow us to call them by their first name. But I think all the professors appreciated the fact that it was a military college. They didn't have a lot of discipline problems in class because we weren't allowed, simply because we were cadets. But the classrooms, especially Sophocles M. Sophocles, he had classes at his house. He had classes off campus. Who was the psychology professor, the guy that used to put everybody...
Frank Matthews.
Used to hypnotize guys in class.
Yeah, I remember that.
And but he would have stuff off campus. And I think they were all appreciative of the fact that we were in a military school and it was easier for them to manage a class.
Right.
Because it was harder to keep us awake. But
Well, by your senior year, your major, mine was accounting, you got to know the professors really good.
yeah, you did.
They knew your strengths, they knew your weaknesses. You also knew all the kids really good that were there, cadets that were really there, because you saw them in every class.
Classes were small, too.
Right.
Small in numbers, so you really did get to know everybody.
And most of our classes, at least for the liberal arts classes, were held in Quonset huts. They didn't have building.
Yeah.
Kirkbride was the first, the engineering building
was.
the first building, classroom building they actually built. All the other classes were either in the dorms, Old Main, or these Quonset huts.
They're pretty austere, they really were.
Yeah.
Or the large lectures in Alumni Auditorium. I remember
Yeah,
Sophocles
those-
and,
that was sleep
you know,
time.
especially the freshman core classes, the political science, the
And that's where we
English.
caught up on our sleep.
Pardon me?
That's where we caught up on our sleep.
Yes.
That
I
was
forget
hard.
the
That was hard to
history
stay
teacher.
awake,
Yeah, the history teacher, he taught us freshman history. He was unbelievably boring and monotone. And he never looked up. He was teaching from his notes, and you look around and everybody was asleep.
Wow. Is this your first time being back to the campus since graduating? Any?
No.
No?
Been back many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
No, I
how-
worked here for 18 years, so.
Wow. But then you're just, you know this back and forth. Okay, so how much has the campus changed?
Night and day.
Oh, yeah.
Night and day.
Night and day.
I mean, we used to have traffic going through, well, you do still, on, what is it, McDade Boulevard going through. But, you know, I got hit one day by a car going from class and didn't do any damage. Hit me in the head, so it didn't matter. But otherwise, it was more of a city campus. I mean, you had traffic all around and people, a lot more congestion than it is today. There was no campus, really.
Yeah, Old Main, the quadrangle across the street, and the football area behind was about it.
That was it.
Couldn't have been more than a half mile around
Yeah.
if you
Right.
took a
Yeah.
complete circle.
I mean, the elementary school was still there in full
Yeah.
force. I mean, they were still working. They were
It
still
was a
teaching
Small
there.
campus.
Wow.
It's really small.
Was
The
there a
library, I mean, my gosh, it wasn't much bigger than this room, it seemed like.
It's there's Old Main, then there's the biology, well, it used to be the biology building, and then there's another building, and that was our library.
That was the library, that was it.
And it's still a college, so we didn't have that many volumes in there. One of the great things about the library was you could get a pass to go down to the University of Penn library because they didn't have the books here. And they'd give you a pass. Of course, we'd go down to the University of Penn library. We had to go in uniform, but still, we went. And across the street from the University of Penn library were all the bars. And so we never made it to the library. We go in, get our things stamped, and then go over to the bars.
We never knew about that.
You didn't?
Yeah, I
You
never
never went to the
stayed.
library, that's why.
Do you gentlemen remember when the nurses came your senior year, and how did that affect the campus?
Not
Don't
much.
remember at all.
I don't
They
remember.
were
I
they
don't
were
remember.
only there for a few classes, and a lot of them were at night, and they really didn't interact with the campus and the cadets.
Certainly never
or-
dated anybody.
Yeah,
Never heard of that.
they were not very involved in it was very quiet about them coming on. I guess there were 13, something like that.
Maybe that was
Something like that.
I
intentional.
think they called them the
'Cause they're all
Dirty
boys.
Dozen.
The Dirty
Male
Dozen,
school.
something like
Right.
that. That was the guys in Old Main that went civilian too. But anyway, but there wasn't a lot of interaction, and we didn't see them. I said Professor Kelleher's wife was a student here at the time, and she attended a couple classes. Obviously, she was like an evening student. But other than that, no, we didn't have a lot of interaction with the nurses.
Interesting.
I think a bigger impact than the nurses coming in the fall of 1965 was the fact that it was the first year of PMC colleges.
Yes.
So Pennsylvania Military College, and then the civilian component was Penn Morton College. And our senior year was the first year that there were boarding civilian students.
Right.
So I remember when we would line up for formation before dinner, and there were some of our former cadet classmates hanging out their windows in Old Main, waving to us, sort of rubbing it in, and that they weren't doing that anymore.
Yeah, our senior year there was.
That was
They
a
gave
bigger
people
impact.
the opportunity to become a civilian, and 12 of them decided to. Yeah.
And still live at the college?
Yes,
Yeah.
and live upstairs. They were the first boarding civilians at the college. Those 12 guys.
And did that create turmoil between the cadets and the civilians?
No.
Still good friends.
Yeah.
Were you jealous of
No, I
their-
think they respected our choices
No,
and we
by then-
respected theirs.
Yeah, by then we didn't have to be jealous.
Right.
Because we were seniors. You know.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There was no
We
jealousy
were
at
king of
all.
the roost.
That's so funny. So I guess, is there any specific memory you want to talk about that has influenced your life now? Leadership opportunities or the words of wisdom that your professors gave you in class? Is there values that you've taken on from PMC throughout your whole life?
Oh, wow, yeah. Integrity for one, all through business, honesty, integrity, doing what you said, meaning what you say. You don't see a lot, one of the disappointing things coming out of the military going into civilian life is you didn't see a lot of that, even back when we were going into the civilians, which was a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, all of those cadet learnings followed through into civilian life.
Absolutely.
I remember 2 lessons that helped me in the Marine Corps enormously was delegation of authority and supervision. One of the things they taught was if you want something done, you better supervise it. If you don't, it won't get done. And I learned that here.
And that's
First of all, I started out wanting to do everything, being the doer. And one of the things Colonel Menard says is, it's not your job to do everything. Once you get the rank and position, you're supposed to step back and let other people do it. And you just make sure it gets done. I mean, simple lessons, but don't come natural,
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
something that was missing in civilian life. People would give you delegate you the responsibility, but then they wouldn't give you the authority to do what you're supposed to do.
And also to do it without micromanaging,
Right.
telling you everything to do. Good lesson.
I would say the friendships that I developed were very, very important. 2 guys that are here right now, Jeff Travers and Dave Irons, and Frank Pellegrini, they helped me through the school. And I'll never forget them for that. In fact, I was in contact with Jeff recently, and I happened to mention them, that quite frankly, he was instrumental that I graduated. So in my life, I take that point of view. If someone needs a hand, I try to help.
Yeah.
I think another thing that we all experienced was by the time we left as seniors, it was so ingrained in us to sort of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And even though in position of leadership you have to lead, you also have to show respect. And I think that was an important thing that I took from PMC.
Yeah, absolutely.
We helped each other get through school.
Yeah, we did.
If one of us struggled, a couple of my classmates, I remember spending all nights with them. Subjects I was weak in, they were strong in, coaxing me through the final exams. I mean, we stayed up many, many nights, helping each other out. I never forget that. So classmates were definitely a factor.
Really
We
formative.
never would have made it without our classmates.
Yep.
Really
A lot of
formative.
them. Some of the guys are just bright.
Right.
Others
No.
of us who are not that bright have to work hard, and we did. We made it. We just helped each other out. Teamwork.
Are you still in contact with a lot of your graduates or your classmates?
Yes, not close contact because we're so spread apart, but we
course.
keep in touch. We keep. Clark here put together a website for our class. This last couple of years he's done this, and that's been really instrumental in helping more guys stay in touch.
Clark, that was an outstanding thing you did.
It was
I
incredible.
appreciate that.
You know,
Incredible thing.
It wasn't
we're
that
all tied
hard.
into this.
It wasn't that
and
hard
he did
to
it.
do.
And I'm an ignorant guy when it comes to technology.
I have them
Through that website, we have a classmate, Jan Zarkin. We used to call him Zippy. He's struggling now with ALS. And I, for one, I know you went and visited him, Clark, in Philadelphia. If it wasn't for the website, I don't think as many people would have a chance to tell Zip how much we care about him.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't know whether he'll be able to make the homecoming. Is he coming?
Yeah.
Said he was.
He's
Said
coming.
he
He's coming tomorrow night for the dinner.
I talked to Joe Carter via email, and he said he wasn't doing that well. That's
I
the
know,
only
he
reason I
was-
mentioned that.
No,
Struggle.
he
He
has
struggled.
his wife said he had some infections and they got those under control, and as far as she knew, they were coming. And Zip will come hell or high water. If he can make it, he'll be here. He'll be in a wheelchair and he'll be on oxygen, but he'll be here. But Yeah, we've stayed close with certain classmates, and it's amazing to me that every time we come back for a reunion, it's like the day after we left school. Everybody
That's right.
picks up right where they left off, and the same friendships.
The only
and that's-
hesitation is that really you?
Yeah. Good thing we have
the right
these, or we would
guy
never know you.
That's right, that's the only hesitation.
And that's the civilians and the cadets still. And yeah, I've stayed close to a few of them, more so lately than before. As the older you get, the more nostalgic you get. You know, you start thinking about older or past things. That
For
you
sure.
did.
That guy out there, John Lynch, one of my roommates,
Yeah.
I was godfather to 5 or 6 of his kids.
Wow.
I can't remember now.
How many are Marines?
None of them are Marines.
Yeah.
None of them.
John's Army all the way.
Yeah.
Are you attending the football game tomorrow? The homecoming football game?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are you,
Wouldn't miss it.
are you excited?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited.
We'll be in the broom parade.
They're
We never played Stevenson, did we?
no.
Steve, no, I don't
No.
want to play.
No, I think that's an engineering school, isn't it?
It is, I believe.
Yeah.
No, we
Yeah.
didn't
Well,
play.
I've been following the Widener team for years. I mean, when they were Division III champions, I was following them, and a couple guys made it to the pros. Joe Fields was the center for the.
Billy
That's for a long
Whitesuit
time.
Johnson.
Yeah,
Johnson.
white shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
Wasn't our class, but we.
I don't know Hall of Fame, is he?
I'm not sure if he's in
No,
the
he's
Hall
not
of
in the Hall of
Fame,
Fame, but he's got some memorabilia in the Hall of
some
Fame.
statistics, yeah.
Yeah.
but his white shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you're right. There are there.
Yeah.
Are there any traditions that you think that should have been maintained for homecoming that have gone away throughout the years, or?
One of them that I can think of is that in addition to the broom drill at halftime of the football game, there was a formation called the hollow square.
Yeah.
And someone would announce the former PMC cadets, alumni, who during that year had passed away. And it was a real tribute. Now, I don't know when that left the homecoming tradition, but I suspect that 10 years from now, after the last cadet class has had their 50th reunion, or when that will be, I doubt the broom drill will survive. But I'm glad that it still does today.
Yeah, you're right. Cadets aren't there to
Right.
do it.
It's encouraging to us as cadets what the college is doing now. Part of it because of Ron Romanowitz and what he's done with the museum, and part of it because Tillelli is now the president of the board, or at least he was. I don't know whether he is still.
He is.
But they're putting things into the college to maintain the history of PMC and make sure that it stays with the college. I thought one of the greatest things they did was during orientation, every incoming student is brought over to the museum and given a talk about the Cadet Corps.
Yes.
Because it is a long tradition. It is the basis for the college. I was upset that they went totally civilian, but I understood why, and I thought Dr. Mall was one of the best presidents and did more for this college than any president since, in terms of
Wow.
founding the college and making sure that it's still viable. I mean, it's not easy to be a civilian public college in today's day and age and continue to exist because of finances and everything else.
But we have the Dauntless Battalion here at Widener University. Let's not forget that. And from what I understand, they're a great bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And in their own way,
Yeah.
they are bringing forth the traditions that we established. I've met a couple of them. In fact, I'm going to go to their barbecue after this to say hello to them. And from what I understand, it's not only Widener University, but a lot of the colleges
Yes.
in the area belong to this Dauntless Battalion. Why did they choose Widener? Because I feel in this area it's one of the best schools around.
I agree with you. I actually remember on my orientation before I decided to come here, going to the museum. And then again, my freshman year, we had a class that was like one whole class day was designated to us spending time in the museum and learning the history about the cadets and PMC. And I found it was really interesting. I felt it was really, really interesting.
And the fact that you're doing this and from each class is coming through, preserving the history from each of the classes as they move through, which I think is fantastic.
You can thank Ron for that.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, how have I changed from the standpoint of before PMC and after PMC? And I tried to make it interesting, and I said, well, before PMC, the things that I looked up to were, the coming of age of Elvis Presley, I guess it would be...
You're dating yourself now.
Yeah, the people like that. In other words, I don't know, going the wrong way. After I came to PMC, the people that I looked up to, especially when I was a rook, were people like Captain DeShaw, who was my company commander, Lieutenant Colonel Taleli, who is Lieutenant Colonel of the Persian Rifles, and of course Jack Gagan, who was the first captain. Billy, you were the first captain. These are people that I looked up to now, and I still think of them. I was looking at the yearbooks, and I still am amazed, that General Taleli, of what he accomplished from PMC.
You're right.
4-star general, commanding general of the U.S. forces in Korea. You want to talk about a major position.
And in Iraq.
And
My
in
son
Iraq,
served under him in Iraq.
he was a division commander, a flanking armored division, all from PMC. And these are the people now that I think him being the president of the trustees now is just a tribute to him and to what PMC meant to him. And I think that's important.
I agree. I came back to their 50th reunion, class of 63, because that class was terrific. They had a tremendous impact on our class. I remember, I second everything you said. Yeah, those guys were terrific. They were great cadets, great individuals, and they helped bring our class together to try to emulate theirs.
Did you have good relationships with older classes? Did other older cadets help you guys out in your rook year or with homework?
Yeah. Well, not in the rook year.
After
They
the rook-
didn't talk to you much during the rook year. But as you
They
grew
were trying
up,
to see who'd stick it out.
Yeah.
Did a lot of people drop out?
Yes. They said when we got together the first day, said, look to your left, look to your right.
In 4
And-
years, only
and
one of you
one
would
of
be
you
here.
be here, right.
And
And
I
that was
had-
pretty true.
I had 2 roommates. I was a 3-man room. Second year, they were both gone.
That's incredibly daunting.
We lost 2/3 of our
Yeah.
the freshmen that showed up.
Of the cadets.
Of the
I don't
cadets,
know
of the
about the
cadets.
civilians.
We lost 2/3 of them
Yeah.
over 4 years. We did. One out of 3.
Some of it was academics, but a lot of it was they just couldn't stand the pressure.
Or didn't like it. Just
Didn't like it.
Didn't want the pressure. They could have made it, but didn't want it.
Were there any defining moments of your PMC experience?
I would say something that stuck with me for years and years is this is a small college in Chester, south of Philadelphia, and for all of our graduations, the speakers or the people who were at our graduation, we had General Eisenhower as a speaker at our one year. We had Barry Goldwater, the year he ran for president, was here speaking. Who was the British English writer?
C.P. Snow.
Snow was here another year.
Snow.
And this is a small college, and those people are internationally known people.
Right.
And they were here for our graduations, which I thought was phenomenal for a school this size. And I remember that and the parades, Sunday parades were phenomenal for me.
Especially Mother's Day.
Yep.
Yeah, Mother's Day.
Mother's Day parade.
Ari, walking and getting my commission was really important for me. And I remember that distinctly. I also remember Billy. He was the only one in his dress whites to get his commission as a Marine Corps second lieutenant. And I remember Bill and I were roommates my sophomore year. And I was really proud that he did that. And he turned out to be a heck of a Marine as well. Those are things that I remember.
Would you like to explain the Mother's Day Parade?
Well, it was a little bit different than most of the Sunday parades in that it was the opportunity for the commandant staff or the college to present annual awards. And so the awardees would not be participating in the parade per se, but rather were lined up on the football field in front of the stands. And a lot of the families did come back and really treasured those memories. So it was particularly nice for those who were honored to be able to share that with their families as opposed to just a college type ceremony that parents couldn't be at.
And you had the Mother's Day corporals. Remember
Yeah,
those?
Mother's Day corporals.
Dave Duthie.
Special honor for the
Mother's Day
freshmen
corporal.
that were getting promoted, or sophomores getting promoted to corporal. Mother's Day was a special event, like meritorious promotion for the guys who got it. There's very few guys who were able to get that. And they bring the mothers forward. It was very touching, It brings tears to my eyes thinking about it. How they honor their sons in front of the mothers. Each mother got a flower. It was a big deal. Big deal. Yeah, Dave Duthie,
Yep.
one of our classmates who passed away sadly, but he was one of ours. Yeah. Never forget that.
Mr. Grosh, I believe you mentioned earlier about the Boardwalk Bowl. Could you talk about that a little bit and explain what it is?
It was, at the time, the only football game in the country that was indoors. It was at the Atlantic City Convention Center, right on the boardwalk. And it was a big deal for Atlantic City as well. They didn't have gambling back then. And the two cadet corps from Kings Point and PMC would march on with their various bands. At halftime, they had the drill teams from Kings Point and Q5 from PMC, which was, I think, at that time, 7 years running champions.
National champion.
And national champions, and they really blew them away, and they really did a great job. Very proud of those guys. And then after the game, the cadets and the midshipmen would go to a ballroom. I don't remember where it was. And all of the young gals from the Margate and the, I guess, Atlantic City and area would come. And the cadets would go out and there would be a formal dance. And it was really, really nice. Plus you had the weekend off.
Yeah.
And
It was
plus,
advertised
obviously,
as a
playing
Little
it
Army
was
Navy game.
important.
They called it Little Army Navy.
Yeah, it was held right after the regular Army-Navy game, then they'd have ours. And Bob's right, it was the only game indoors, but it was in a convention
And it
center.
was televised.
And
it was televised, yes.
They used to take sod, rolled up sod, and spread it out, and they put canvas down first, and then they put the sod on top of it. And you could actually see as you're running down the field that we had metal cleats way back then, and the tips were metal, and you'd see sparks. When the guy was running, you'd see sparks coming up, hitting the cement, which was underneath all of this. So
That's
it
amazing.
wasn't very soft. It was very, very hard, but it was kind of neat.
That's very neat. Very neat. So our final question today is, how did PMC prepare you to be a leader for the rest of your life? What leadership values did you take from PMC and apply for the rest of your life? We'll start with Bill.
Well, since I went into the military from here, basically everything I learned from the Rook year applied. The discipline, the self-discipline, the taking responsibility for your actions, supervision, as I mentioned before, enthusiasm for your career, and motivation, to spread that to your subordinates. The things I mentioned about the senior class being so influential in my perspective to us was seniors have a responsibility to nurture the juniors.
Right.
I mean, so every aspect of cadet life here helped me become a good officer in the Marine Corps.
It stood, for exactly what Bill said, and it stood you in civilian life too, especially the taking responsibility for your own actions, the integrity you learned, the honor code, all of that influenced, your civilian life as well, working in industry. That was one of the disappointing things, honestly, about going into industry. You see a lot of that didn't exist. And I felt that being an old codger, that everybody should spend 2 years after college, either in the military or some government service of some type, and then go to college. Because when I went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the military or teach, and I didn't do either. I did go in the military, but I didn't stay in. I went in the reserves, but anyway, and I didn't teach. But you really don't know what you're doing when you come out of high school, and the whole cadet experience focuses you.
Sales and marketing is what I did after I got out of college. And PMC taught me, first of all, that if you really wanted to do well and make a sale, you really had to prepare. You had to know your product line. You had to know your competition. You had to know how to sell, how to close, and all these things I learned over the years. But I think the basis of how you learn about a product line and how you explain that in a presentation to somebody else was important to me, and it still is, quite frankly.
We really didn't understand, or at least I didn't understand, all of the Rook experience. Why am I learning how the cal is, and having to recite that, or what time is it, and et cetera. But as the cadet experience went on, and then we went from freshmen next year to sophomores, and we were part of that upper class that was trying to help the others. And one of the things that I look back upon was that we learned how to follow before we learned how to lead. And I think that was always a very important thing for me in my civilian career, is that in order to lead, you also have to be willing to follow and have to know how to follow. So I think that really helped me throughout my life.
I think it's an exceedingly important lesson to learn. You need to learn how to follow before you can lead.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here today. We truly appreciate it. I'm so glad that I got to hear your stories and your memories. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing you on TV, I'm sure.
I hope
Thank
so.
you very much.
Thank you.
That's
And
all
thank you
today.
to Ron
I'm your
once
host,
again.
Katie Colt. Tune in next year for Voices of Freedom.